just absolutely dispatched her when Simona Halep's not really one to get smacked off the court very often, considering she makes a lot of balls back. She's not one of these people who goes and crashes out of a tournament. So that was
Like early on, that was honestly the best tennis I think I've ever seen anyone play.
And
He
but
was
I think that was really her only chance to win a Grand Slam. She just needs to give up.
Queensland! It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? Costello! Unbelievable! Balotelli! Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, Ramal's close! He's given him! He's given him! Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday!
Welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. This is episode 75 of the show. Almost forgot
Ooh.
there. Yeah, that actually is a bit of a milestone. I realized that
Yeah.
like 10 minutes ago. You should,
Yeah.
I guess they don't raise the bat in cricket or something for that, but there should be some sort of celebration for a 3/4 century. But yeah, I'm proud of it. Thanks for joining me today, though, lads. It's a bit of a later one,
It's okay.
but I appreciate that you've put in the effort and show the dedication to the show. But I'm sure you've been able to work out from the title and the description and the people who I'm joined with today. But today we're doing a tennis episode. The French Open finished yesterday for us, or this morning, basically. We're doing this Monday night, 12th of October, for those playing at home. French Open review. So it's been a pretty fun 2 weeks of tennis. And when I introduce you guys, I will start us off like we did with the US Open review. I'll start us off with the match of the tournament, one in the men's, one in the women's, or just one all up if that's what you've got. Cam, welcome back. What are your matches of the tournament?
So I'll start with men's. So I think one of my clear matches of the tournament would have to be Schwartzman versus Team. I think they versed each other in the quarterfinal, and it was a 5-setter with 3 tiebreaks, so it was spicy. And I don't know, I think they'll both, well, obviously Team, he's a Grand Slam winner this year, so obviously he's going to be playing at his best tennis he's probably played in his career. And then Schwartzman, he's like more of like a rising, getting into a stronger form. So it was going to be interesting when they inevitably had to verse each other. And it was a very interesting match. Like obviously I couldn't watch all of it because I'd be staying up till like 4 a.m. in the morning. But I thought it was really good match. They were both playing incredible tennis. The rallies were like very long. And yeah, I thought they were just playing really well. Obviously, Schwartzman was just playing a little better. I predicted Schwartzman to go further than Team. So I just tapped myself on the back for that one. So that's my men's.
Yeah, we're going to review I went back and listened to our predictions that we made, and I know, Brownie, you still wrote yours down, so you had access to them, so we'll go through them in a bit. Some interesting calls we made, but yeah, that was probably my top one, but I didn't see all of it. I watched it while I was going to sleep, so I watched like the whole second set and the end of the first. It was really high-quality tennis. Schwartzman was kind of dominating most of the points, and then Team would just produce like a freak shot to end the rallies every now and then. But he was hanging in there just through sheer brilliance. But I think Schwartzman deservedly took the win there because in most of the points, he was the one steering the rally. So, but yeah, kind of a shame that wasn't earlier in the session for us to watch because that would have been definitely match of the tournament. I think if we got to watch all 5 sets. But Brownie, what about you?
Well, for me, the match of the tournament, I had that one as well up there. The one I went with was the team match from the round before, actually. Team against Gaston. That match just really interested me. I didn't watch many of the matches in the second week. I had a bit of a busy week. But what really interested me is the tactics that Gaston went with. He knew the team was exhausted, had played 7 best-of-5 set matches just the 2 weeks prior before coming into the French Open, and I thought a stat somewhere, he hit over 50 drop shots in the match. So getting Team to sprint to the net. Team obviously managed to get over in the first 2 sets, and Gaston just kept going, played his tactics well, played a really smart match considering he's only 19 or 20 or something. and managed to bring it back to a best of 5, and then team managed to get over in the 5th set. I just thought he really showed like maturity above his age and really played a really smart game against someone who was tired, and I just thought it was good form from him, and also very good form from team to like fight back, manage to just out muscle him in the end and get the job done. But a very thrilling 5 sets there as well, especially from a hometown favourite who is like up and rising. This was really his first tournament for him to be kind of known on the world stage. So that was a great one. That was up there for me for sure.
Yeah, that was definitely up there. I think Schwartzman also cracked the 50 in drop shots against team the following match. So it was the tournament of the drop shot, really. I know the commentators were going on about that in the last week, how like they've never seen the drop shot have such impact. But yeah, it was interesting to see. I've got two. Well, you mentioned Gaston, but for me, it was his other match when he beat Wawrinka. We watched, I think, four out of the 5 sets of this one, but it was pretty dramatic. Like the crowd was getting into it, obviously because of Gaston. Stan was kind of having a bit of a hissy fit about the rain and stuff. He wasn't getting on with the umpire very well. I think it's a few points he was claiming he was slipping, and then the umpire would come out and check and would just say no, we're still playing. So he was losing his cool there. And yeah, it was just really intense because I think the crowd noticed that he was getting annoyed. So when Gaston would win a point, they would get more amped up to annoy him even more. And it was kind of the tennis was high quality as well, but just almost the drama of it was interesting to see. And then Shapovalov and Cabello Baena. This is probably my number one, to be honest, because we watched all of it because it was early on in the session. But it looked like no one wanted to win the match really. Whenever someone got the upper hand, they kind of stopped playing good tennis and the other person took over. The whole match though, I just thought Shapovalov was going to overpower him. He won the second set in the tiebreak, I think, and then from that point on, I thought that was kind of the breaking point, and he was just going to clean up in the third and fourth. But Cabello Baena fought back, and then Shapovalov fought back, and it was just topsy turvy the whole way through the 5 sets, and then it ended in dramatic fashion. Shapovalov, I can't remember if it was a serve and volley. I think it might have been, but he came up to the net looking to finish a point early, probably before he had earned the right to come to the net, and he missed a pretty easy volley. He missed it long, so it was just an interesting finish. Went for days, very unpredictable, and that's probably one of the shocks of the tournament as well, which we'll get into in a second. On the women's side, do you guys have any matches for the women's side as well?
Yeah, I have one.
Well, who have you got, Cam?
Well, I have the first match of the tournament. I have Kontaveit versus Garcia. So obviously, I was pumped for the tournament, and Kontaveit was in obviously good form because she's a very highly ranked player, and she did well. I think she did well in US, and she did well in the clay tournaments before the US. So it was very interesting to see her go up against a former world 3. So Garcia kind of like was playing really well in the first set, and then she kind of like dropped her energy and kind of like took hold of like the momentum of the match. And then it obviously ended with Garcia beating Kontaveit, which was a pretty big surprise for Kontaveit to go out first round when people were probably backing her in to go like quarterfinals. So, and the way Garcia was playing was probably like the best she's probably played in a long time, and it was interesting to see her just whack winners and have some really nice drop shots as well. So I thought that match was pretty good.
Yeah, that was a good one. Garcia produced a few belters actually. Brownie, what was your pick?
Well, my one was the other Caroline Garcia match against Elise Mertens in the 3rd round, where she kind of got chopped up in the first set and then clawed her way back into the match. Mertens is kind of this year as a whole been one of like the informed players of the top 20, kind of been Hasn't had any results which are wildly amazing, but just like quite consistent, climb your way up. Could definitely be a top 10 player come the next couple of years. And for Garcia to get so chopped up in the first set in her home Grand Slam, which has been out of form since like her run in like late 2017, where she managed to get into the top five, to claw her way back, it was a nice, and to win in a match so tight, 7-5 in the third against a really informed player, it's kind of a nice redemption story for her. Thought that was a thrilling one as well, being 7-5 in the third set. Yeah.
Yeah, they were both really good to watch as well. Both had them down. The other two I just wanted to mention, um, Jennifer Brady versus Clara Towson. We only got to see the end of this one on the TV, but it was a very tense finish, similar to the Shapovalov Cabello Bain. It kind of just seemed like no one wanted to take the reins and finish off the match. Both were very tentative at the end, and it ended up being one of the shocks of the tournament again. Towson, a young 17-year-old qualifier, overcoming the big, powerful seed Brady. And then the other one, Irani versus Burtons. This was one I was interested in because me and Campbell did Roland Garros fantasy, and it was actually a really fun game, to be honest. I highly recommend it. Hopefully, some other tennis tournaments copy their system because it's elite. But I had Irani down because I thought Burtons was in really bad form coming into it, so I thought Irani was a good chance. So I was keeping an eye on this game the whole way through, and yeah, it was really intense. 7-9 in the third. Burtons was like dying at the end of the match. Like she couldn't run, claiming she had cramps and stuff. And then Irani just like stormed off at the end. And then it came out in like the press. I think she had an interview with Italian TV, and she was saying like Burtons was faking all these injuries, and yeah, like claiming she was just making it all up for medical timeouts and stuff. And then there was like images floating around of Burtons leaving the court in a wheelchair. So a lot of drama in that one. But ultimately it would have been a pretty good match to watch. We didn't get to see much of it on TV, similar to the Brady Towson one. We only saw the end, but yeah, that would have been a good one. Now moving on to the shock of the tournament. Cam, do you want to start us off? Do you want to say your men's and your women's?
Yeah, so is it the player who shocked me the most during this tournament?
Nah, like a match, like an upset.
Ooh. I thought first round again. The Aussie Polmans. I thought it was pretty surprising for him to beat Humber. Humber was in pretty good form, and obviously Polmans isn't like one of the greater Australian tennis players. You'd probably think of like Kyrgios, De Minaur, Millman, Thompson, and like to think that Polmans could beat Humbert in 4 sets. It was pretty wild, and I thought Humbert was easily going to win this match because I don't think highly of Polmans. And it's a bit savage of me to say that, but it's true. And
he was a lucky loser as well. He lost in qualifying.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was just like surprising that he beat Humber. Also Humber was French, so I thought like Humber would have had that French mentality to win the match, but obviously the Aussie came out in front.
Yeah, that was definitely a good one. That was one of my worst predictions actually.
Yeah, no, it's my worst
I said
as well.
I was big on Humbert. I thought he was going to make the 4th round at least because he was in a soft part of the draw. And yeah, when I woke up to that news that he had lost to Polmans, I was a bit taken aback and a bit disappointed. But yeah, no, that was a big upset. What about in the women's, Cam? Do you have one there?
There was quite a few upsets in the women's. Most of the top seeded
Pretty
girls
much every match.
Yeah, most of the top seeded girls got knocked out pretty early. One I have here was in the third rounds. Collins beat Muguruza in 3 sets. So I think we all predicted Muguruza to either get to like the semis or the final, or Hamish even predicted that she was gonna win the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And
Are you just picking my bad predictions here?
Yeah.
I feel like this is a manhunt.
And obviously you don't think Collins. I think Collins made a good run in like an Oz Open a few years ago. She made it to like the quarters, I think. She did pretty well, and I think she got knocked out by like another American because it was like an American versus an American. So yeah, Collins obviously she's she's been a good player, but obviously she's getting a bit older, so I didn't think she had it in her to beat Muguruza, a former French Open champion. I thought Muguruza, she knew the way of her racket, she knew the way of the court on French Open. She did back in 2016, beating Serena. But I thought it was very good at Collins, and she even made it to the quarterfinals, which I thought Collins did a very good job there, and Muguruza did not.
Collins smashed it.
Yeah.
She'd probably been the last person I would have picked
Yeah,
to have
no,
made a run
genuinely.
here.
Thought she would have been just a first round exit.
Yeah, and in terms of upsets, it's probably not the biggest differential in ranking, but like this is probably the most stunned I was out of any of the results when I woke up and checked the scores. Because yeah, I was confident Muguruza was going to cruise to late in the tournament, and yet for Collins to dispatch of her, I was quite surprised. Brownie,
Well,
what shocks do you have?
my number one upset of the tournament, which I think is a pretty obvious one, was Swiatek against Halep in the fourth round. Halep was like clearly in the best form out of anyone in the tournament, kind of cruising, or not cruising, but like very consistently getting her way to the title in Rome. And then her first 3 rounds as well were pretty cruisy. I mean, and I watched some of that match against Anna Samova, and like she was just on fire. She was barely missing a shot, you know. So I know Swiatek's also in good form, but she didn't play the strongest plays in the first 3 rounds out of anyone that she could have played. So I thought that, you know, I wouldn't have been surprised if it went to 3 sets. Even if Swiatek won over 3 sets, I would have been like, okay, like still a massive upset. It would still be a massive shock. But like the fact that it was 1-2, like just absolutely dispatched her when Simona Halep's not really one to get smacked off the court very often, considering she makes a lot of balls back. You know, she's not one of those people who goes and crashes out of a tournament. So that one really surprised me. I thought Halep was like, you know, she was my favorite to win. She was in such good form, very consistent. So, I mean, in hindsight, it's not that surprising considering Swiatek just chopped every single person that she played for the whole time. But
Yeah.
at the time, that really shocked me because she wasn't really on my radar until that match at all. Well, not that much. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Pretty much every match Fiontek played was was an upset. She absolutely killed it. Yeah, so for her to not only win that match, but to absolutely dispose of her like she did, that was very impressive. I've got quite a few here, but I won't mention the ones we talked about in the previous section because no need. In the men's, I've got two. I just want to mention Daniel Altmaier beating Matteo Berrettini. If for those who, well, there's not many out there who, but anyone who's been like studying the Challenger tours and stuff would have known that Altmaier was coming in good form, but still, for someone who qualified to beat the number 7 seed, that's just unheard of, really. So that's automatically one of the biggest upsets just because of that fact. Korda, wait, is his first name Sebastian?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right to me, Sebastian Korda, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that is his name. Another qualifier, he beat John Isner in the first round. I don't think many people would have had that on their radar, but well done to him. And then in the women's, there were obviously so many to choose from. Fiona Ferro beating Elena Rybakina, Cam's pick to go deep in the tournament. That was another one where I woke up and I was just like, that's just a bizarre result. Would never have picked that in a million years. And then Schmiedlova upsetting Azarenka.
Yeah.
This was another one where I was just a bit confused. Like Schmiedlova, in the past, she's been a top 30 player, but she hasn't done much in the last 2 years. I think she's been injured as well. And Azarenka was probably the most informed player on the tour. In the tournament. So, for her to just lose in the second round, I have to say, I did say because I was getting around Patinseva, who was in that section, and I said I have a feeling Azarenka might be a little bit fatigued and might have an early round loss. So I'll back myself there.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't expecting it to be from Schmiedlova, but yeah. And then my final one, Podoroska beating Svitolina.
Yeah.
At this point of the tournament, nothing really shocked you.
Yeah.
But
No.
it was Svitolina's to lose in the quarterfinals. She was easily not the highest ranked player, but she was easily like the most convincing in the well, not convincing because she dropped a set to Sarazua, but um, the other
6-1.
seeds were Kenin and Kvitova, so I would have backed Svitolina in over them, and everyone else was unseeded. So it looked like it was Svitolina's Grand Slam to lose, yet she lost to Podoroska, who was ranked like 140 qualifier. So yeah, quite a lot of upsets. I could have gone for days there. There was so many shocks, especially in the women's side. Pretty much every seed losing before the quarterfinals. So yeah. But next, we're gonna go through our predictions and talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Cam, I don't think you had a record of your predictions, so I've got them down here. So I'm happy to chat about them for you. But Brownie, what was your favorite, or what do you think was your best, and what do you think was your worst?
Well, my best prediction, which I thought it was a rogue one. Going in, I was kind of nervous about it, but it paid off in the end. Was Lorenzo Sonego. I was like, he'd never made it past the second round of a Grand Slam, and I was like, I just looked at his draw, and I felt like it was kind of he kind of had an open kind of space in the draw. I thought it might have been his time to do something in a Grand Slam, and once he won his second round match, I was like, okay, that's a good call. But then he beat Taylor Fritz as well in the third round in straight sets. And he was never going to beat Diego Schwartzman. I think the fourth round was going to be the maximum he was ever going to go. But that's still a great result for him. And it seemed like there was a bit of an opening, even though it took him, looking here, 5 sets to get past the qualifier Gomez in his first round. But he beat Bublik and Fritz in straight sets. I thought, yeah, there was a bit of an gap in the draw there, and he did well to string some matches together and get through the fourth round. That's a good result for him. And then the other one the other strange call that I made, the stranger calls that I made were the ones that ended up doing better. Because there were so many upsets this tournament. The calls that I made that I thought were like sure thing calls, none of them worked out. Sinai Kova, I thought there was an opportunity for her to go deep. She got to the third round, so I was like, that's like I'll say that's like a neutral to good for there. It's a pass, yeah. Because I looked and I thought she could get through her little section, and then I thought Burton's would have been gone by then, but she just got chopped by Burton's. But third round solid result for her. And then the other one was that Medvedev was going to lose very, very early on, and he did. Not that, of course, people who don't really know much about tennis probably would have thought that was a good, interesting call to make. But I guess if you do any kind of research, it's not that surprising, really.
Yeah. Cam, I think. Do
I
you
think
remember what your predictions are,
yeah,
or do you want me to
I think
say?
my best male prediction was probably Sinner. I guess I predicted Sinner to go pretty far within the tournament, and he actually did surprisingly well. Obviously, he came off a good run at Rome, so I was like, maybe he might get like third round, maybe like second, but he did very well. He beat Goffin in straight sets, I'm pretty sure. He beat, I think, 2 other players, and then he beat Zverev, who was a US Open grand finalist, and he beat Zverev in 4 sets. So I thought that was very, very impressive for him to do. And he then he had Nadal in the quarterfinals, and he fought harder than probably Djokovic did in the final, and came out with a better score result than Djokovic did, because they went to a tiebreak in the first set, whereas Djokovic got whipped 6-love.
Yeah.
So I thought Sinner did very well. And for women, I had Rybakina, obviously. I thought she was going to go further. I think I had Svitolina. She's a top 3 seed. She's probably bound to do really well. But yeah, I think most of my women's predictions went out early. I did predict Ostapenko to beat Pliskova, and she did beat Pliskova, which I was happy.
You had that one.
Which I was happy she did, because Pliskova does not have a good Grand Slam record this year. So I thought she might be able to beat her, obviously, as well as Pliskova's played a lot of matches, so she's fatigued. So yeah, those are probably my best predictions.
Yeah, you predicted Bouchard third. Bouchard, she came third round. Pirankova, she came third round. You also got around Jabeur, who made the fourth round. So they're all solid calls. And Schwartzman, I know he didn't win the Grand Slam like you predicted, but I can't lie. I laughed at your suggestion that he would even beat teams. So for him to get to the semis, I think that's definitely a win for you there. On the flip side of the coin, Ryder Keane is probably your worst. Pospisil, that was a tough one against Berrettini, but and then this is for you and me, but our abuse of Kennan, that was probably
Yeah.
a bad prediction looking back. She did quite well. Like I
Yeah.
don't even know in fantasy, I just kept picking her opponent because I'm like, no, this time she's gonna lose. This time she's gonna lose.
Yeah, I
And
thought she was gonna lose.
she just
She made it to the grand final, but
finally.
then she got whipped.
Yeah, but I think everyone would have got whipped by Swiatek. And then me, my calls. Look, I made so many calls looking back, and most of them flopped. I mentioned Sinner and Garcia. They both had good tournaments, but they were, probably a bit more predictable, um, runs. But my my finest moment, I was chatting about some qualifiers who could be dangerous, and by no means did I expect any of them to make the semi final. But Nadia Podoroska, I mentioned her based off based off some recent form in low level tournaments, and she amazingly made the semi final, beat Svitolina. Never heard of her before this tournament. So that's probably the finest moment in my
Yeah.
podcasting career, even though it's very short. Cecchinato also made the third round and got beaten by Zverev. I think that was a decent prediction there. But my worst, probably went too hard on the Muguruza bandwagon. She didn't even get close to winning it. Shapovalov, I think we all were keen on
I went hard on
Chapo.
Shapovalov.
Yeah, I said he would push Novak in 5. Novak did get pushed in 5 in the semis.
In the semis, yeah.
But just by someone else, which isn't ideal. But Chapo, I think we all mentioned him, and he did not do too great. Yeah, but Umber's probably my other main one. I got around him, and he lost first round. So thanks.
I also went hard on Lajovic, who
Yeah.
went down to Kevin Anderson, and I thought he would make the fourth round, like if all quarterfinals. I thought he would go big, and I also was very ambitious for Petra Martic. I thought she had a very open draw, and looking back on it, she did have a very open draw, but she just lost to Siegemund in the third round. I thought she was going to be like quarterfinals, but no.
By like the fourth day of the tournament, every section of the draw was open. It was just outrageous.
Yeah, genuinely.
This has nothing to do with you guys, but I feel like just reading them out. I did my votes for the Grand Slam as I've been doing. So for the men's, I gave Sinner full votes. Then Gaston, Altmaier, Nadal picked up the fourth most. I didn't want to give him the full because he didn't beat that many good players apart from his last 2 matches, but hard to criticize him when he's just dispatching of like the world's best players like he was. And Schwartzman, Tsitsipas, Djokovic, they all got to mention. So Sinner's actually on top of my overall leaderboard, just ahead of Carreno Busta. Carreno Busta has picked up both points in both Grand Slams. Him and Fuchsovic are the only people to have done that, so that's pretty good effort from him. And then on the women's side, obviously Swiatek, full votes. The closest set she had was 6-4. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
And she beat Kenin, Vondrousova, Halep, and before the tournament, I probably would have said Halep and Vondrousova were both in the top 5 on clay in the whole tour. So for her to have dispatched them so easily. And then the others who got votes, Podoroska, Trevisan, Collins, and Siegemund. Also, Gavrilova got a few votes. the shock against Yastremska. But in the women's, Azarenka's ahead by quite a long way, and then Garcia's chilling in second. So it kind of just lends itself to people who are probably better than their ranking. All right, and now time for winners and losers. Campbell, do you want to start us off? Who were the biggest winners? Who impressed you the most this French Open? Who were the positives?
Well, for women's, there's a lot that impressed me a lot. So, but probably the person that's apart from Swiatek, I would say the person who impressed me the most was Nadia Podoroska, making it all the way to the semi-finals when she was just a qualifier and no one really knew who she was very impressive, I thought. And another one I thought was Trevisan. I think she was also a qualifier. I'm pretty sure. And she made it all the way to the quarterfinals until she met the Beast, who absolutely demolished her. But I thought the two qualifiers, I think Trevor Sand beat Burden 6-4, 6-4. Nadia beats Vitalina. I'm not sure which other seed she beat, but I think she beat some other seeds. But they both did very well, and they had very hard matches, so it wasn't surprising us. I thought they were going to both lose like first round, but it was surprising for both of those people to win and make it that
Yeah,
far.
I'll jump in there. I went similar to what I did last year. I picked a few collectives as well as individuals. Yeah, so one of the collectives I had was just qualifiers.
Yeah.
The qualifiers, there were some great performances. I think it was a big advantage to be a qualifier because you had 3 matches on the surface. Obviously, every clay court's different, and this year, normally there's a long gap after the Australian Open, and there's like a clay tournament or 2 every week. So most players getting a lot of clay practice going in to the French. But yeah, this season there wasn't too much run in, obviously because of the US. So I think it was quite an advantage for them to get 3 matches on the courts early, like the week before the tournament started, and I think that really showed. You had also you had those 2, as Cam mentioned, made the quarters in the women's side. Well, Podoroska made the semis, and then on the men's side, Altmaier and Korda both made the 4th rounds. So, yeah, unusual to see qualifiers that deep in the tournament, but I think this year it definitely lended itself to the qualifiers, and yeah, very impressive from all 4 of those guys. Brownie, do you have
Well,
another winner?
the first winner I have is like yours, a general theme, and it's people born in this century, like people born 2000 or later. I think in the past, I mean, in the US Open, I said a similar thing, but for people born in like the late 90s, like the next gen. And like, I guess these guys are also classified as next gen right now because they are young. But I think you could be kind of need a new name for it because if you're classifying Dominic Thiem, who's like 8 years older than Sinner, and they're like the same generation, can't really cop it. But on the women's side, obviously Sharon Tex born in 2001, and she won it. She demolished everyone and won the whole thing. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why she's a winner. On the men's side, we had Sinner, who's like leading the charge of the guys of that generation, who made the quarterfinals and had some good wins. We've already talked about him. And then we have Gaston, who had a really good win against Wawrinka and made the 4th round, lost to Thiem. And then we have Korda as well, who made the 4th round as well.
Fernandez, I think she made the 3rd round, I think.
Is she? Oh, yeah. So in general, they're doing very well for themselves in the Grand Slams this early on to perform like that. Normally, they come out, the guys, and the young guys, and do some well in some random tournaments, climb their way up the rankings, and it takes them a long time to do any damage at the Grand Slams. So for 2 of them to make the 4th round and 1 to make the quarterfinals on the men's side was very surprising and very impressive. So I have more hope for that generation than I do for the next gen, who all aren't really. I mean, the later side of the next gen are, but not like the 25 to 30-year olds who are still classified as next gen for some reason. Yeah, so I was impressed by them. I think they're massive winners because none of them were really on the map either. They're at all other than Sinner, but the other 2 are pretty much outside the top 100. So, yeah.
Yeah, Cam, do you have any other winners or people who impressed you most, or
Well,
groups who you
I
think did
have
well?
Swiatek. Obviously, she won the Grand Slam, but also I was quite impressed that she got to the semi-finals of the women's doubles as well. The same time she was playing women's singles, so I thought it was kind of her tournament, really.
Yeah, 100%. She killed it. But yeah, I feel like we didn't even discuss the finals. But yeah, Swiatek, absolute legend. I'm kind of sad. I jumped on the bus in the for the US Open on her, and I didn't get around her for this one, which hurts because that would have been a nice little prediction. But yeah, when she was versing Vondrousova in the 1st round, I thought that could be an interesting match, but she'll probably lose there. But yeah, Sinner and Swiatek they've been hovering around the 50 to 70 mark in the rankings, and we've been waiting for a big statement. But tournament for them, but probably didn't expect it in a big tournament like this. Probably would have expected it in like a 500 or a Masters or Premier 5 or whatever the women's tournaments are called. But yeah, that they were really impressive. And then Nadal's performance in the final,
Yeah.
like that, like early on, that was honestly the best tennis I think I've ever seen anyone play. He was smacking forehands like 165 kilometers an hour. It was just ridiculous. He was making Djokovic just basically try and smack winners because Djokovic knew as soon as he'd get into a rally with him, Nadal would just work him with the angles of his top spin and he'd have no hope. So if it wasn't for that third set, the commentators were saying it's probably the greatest individual performance on clay ever. But that third set got a little bit closer, so that you probably can't give him that title just yet. But yeah, absolutely insane. But Brownie, I know he's not French, but do you think if he maybe wins like one more or something, do you think that arena should be named the Rafael Nadal Arena? Like
Genuinely.
it's his
ridiculous.
stadium. It's a joke.
He plays there every single match, and his record at the French Open, like I think it's 100 wins or 101 wins and 2 losses.
Yeah, he's only lost twice.
It's the most ridiculous thing that's ever. It's just unheard of. Like, can't even imagine that ever happening. You could never predict such a thing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, I also thought for men's quarter was actually pretty surprising, and he was pretty impressive. Obviously, he got whipped by Nadal, but I thought that he was pretty impressive to make it to round 4.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him. I've seen the name before. I know he has a famous dad and everything. They talked about that nonstop, but that's not why I know him. I've just seen his name around draws and stuff, but didn't know too much about him. And yeah, very impressive performance. Must have skyrocketed into the top 100.
Surely.
Of the rankings. My other winner, another collective. I've gone Italian tennis. So yes, their big names didn't really do that well. I think Seppi lost first round, Berrettini lost like third round or something. But Sinner made the quarterfinals. Cecchinato from qualifying made the third round. Brownie's man Sonego made the fourth round, and then on the women's side, the qualifier Trevisan made the quarterfinals. So, absolutely dominant performance from them. Usually a pretty dominant clay courting nation, but what were you going to say, Cam?
I was going to say Paul Massetti.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's another like if I honestly reckon if he was in this tournament, he would have gone on a run as well. He was in great form. So yeah, the future of Italian tennis is bright because all 5 of those people we just mentioned are all under the age of like 26. They've been a bit lacking in the last 5 years of tennis or so until like Berrettini and Fognini hit form about 2 years ago, because there was a bit of a void there from like Seppi was never really that good, but he was always like ranked around 35th, 40. And then you had people like Vinci, Irani, Panetta on the women's side. But then since they've gone, there's not really been anyone in there. So it's nice to see some Italian representation again because they're obviously one of the biggest tennis nations going around. So I think they were one of the big winners as well.
Massetti's actually playing right now, and he just won a set against Cuevas.
Yeah, the tournaments just go straight on. Yeah, I don't know. Massetti is definitely one to watch out for. I think we might be talking about him in the 2021 French Open review after he's lifted the trophy. Jokes. After he's surprised us all. My final winner though is Sophia Kenin. As I mentioned in our predictions, me and Campbell, we were laughing about her a lot. We have a WTA fantasy league, me and Campbell, and is it your team or is the league called Kenin is Trash? I don't know.
I think my player is called Kenin is Trash.
Yeah, I think your account's called Kenin is Trash. But yeah, she definitely shocked us. She lost love and love to Azarenka in the warm up to this tournament, but she came out. She was very scrappy early on. Pretty much went to 3 sets against everyone, but she ultimately scrapped away to the final. And you can't really take that away from her. So well done to Kenin, 2 Grand Slam finals out of 3. And that's pretty rare in women's tennis with the unpredictability of it. So I think she's earned her spot in the top 10.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, I had her at my last winner, which Kenin came under as well, was Kenin and Tsitsipas. And I think both of them kind of did the same thing in this tournament of like affirm themselves in their current positions. Because both of them, I mean, I was shitting on Tsitsipas a lot before the tournament, and he very much, surprised me, being very consistent and making it all the way to the semi-finals. And then Cannon in the same boat, going all the way to the final. So in doing so, Tsitsipas was left behind a little bit at the US Open, what we talked about after that tournament, and he did well to come back now and respond. And then Cannon in the same boat came out of nowhere and won the Australian Open, and no one really trusts her as a top 5 player, but she's kind of established that now. So I think that's a win for both Tsitsipas and Cannon to affirm themselves. They could be trusted as consistent and reliable top 10 players for the future, because they're both only still 22. So yeah, win for both of them.
Yeah, so that's it for the winners. A lot of positivity. Now, time for some negativity. I can't lie. It was a bit hard to find the losers for me, even though there was a lot of upsets. There weren't too many glaring losers from this tournament. For me, I'll start us off with Djokovic.
Yeah.
I know it's a cheap blow, but I think after the last 3 months he's had, it would have been nice to kind of change the wave of what's been happening to him in the last few months by beating Rafa at Roland Garros. But ultimately, he got absolutely demolished. Lost a set 6-love, which would be pretty humiliating for someone as good as him. And ultimately, the main focus for those guys right now is, they probably wouldn't admit it, but it's the Grand Slam totals. And Djokovic he falls one. Well, he's lost another opportunity to catch up to them, if you know what I mean. And Nadal's tied Federer now. So yeah, I just think I don't think there was too many standout losers, but for me, Djokovic was definitely someone who came out of this tournament not so great, because I think this could have been a chance for him to beat Rafa at Roland Garros, and he didn't take it. Cam, who disappointed you? Who do you think came out of this a loser?
I have a few for women. Kerber, she lost in the first round.
What happened to Kerber?
What is happening to Kerber? She's dead. Oh,
I forgot she existed.
Yeah, she lost to Juven 6-3, 6-3 in the first round or something. I don't know.
Yeah, she won 2 Grand Slams. She just needs to go away.
And she lost first round. Oh no, not first round, but she lost in her first test in the US.
She must be not squatting enough in her forehand.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Maybe she's just going to turn into one of those battlers down at rank 300 who's won Grand Slams. I hope not, but because I love Kerber. But yeah, I don't know what's going on there. That was bizarre. But yeah, good shout, Cam.
Brady lost first round. She did very well in US Open, so I thought she was going to do well. Keys lost first round. She's also thought she was going to do well. She obviously didn't, because she lost. Kontaveit lost first round. Azarenka lost second round. Pliskova again lost second round. You're
really is a losers in there.
Your rank.
You can't really pick one out. If you say one, you have to say all of them, because they're all in the same boat.
I don't know. She's definitely dropped ranking. I think she's now maybe 7th.
I don't know.
I think she's 7th now.
About the women's rankings.
I think she's 7th now. So she used to be 2nd. So she's definitely very trash now. The robot has finally been defeated, and I think she lost second round in US. She lost second round in French. She just needs to get over her second rounds.
Yeah. So before you go, Brownie, I'll just touch on your Madison Keys point. I think she's a big loser. She's had a really bad year. She hasn't made it past the third round of any of the Grand Slams this year, and I think she's played one Masters and she lost in the second round. So, Keys, she's kind of underperformed. She's almost this is very harsh, but I think this kind of comes with being an American female tennis player. But she's been pretty underwhelming her whole career almost. Yeah. I think everyone's been waiting for that breakout, and she's never really got there.
She had that one breakout when Salone won. She made it to the grand final of the US Open.
Yeah.
But I think she made 2 semis in 1 year, but yeah, since then.
But I think that was really her only chance to win a Grand Slam. She just needs to give up.
Call it quits early. But yeah, I think I don't know what's happening with Key. She's kind of just stagnated in her career. But to be honest, that kind of seems to be a common thing in the women that when they're young, they bolt up the rankings and then they just get stuck and they're almost not as good as their rankings suggest they are. But yeah, disappointing from Key. Still waiting for that breakout, and it doesn't seem to be
And
coming anytime soon.
for men's, I would say Nishikori. I guess he's not really that good anymore. I mean, like he made a grand final once in his life, and he used to be like top 20, maybe top 10, I think, and
Like
he
top
beat
5.
He was like number 4 at one point.
he lost to
Travaglia, I think.
Travaglia, and I'm like Nishikori, come on. Come on.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Disappointing from Nishikori. Is that your only man you've got?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
And
right. Brownie.
Shapovalov was pretty
Oh, yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
Or
Brownie, who have you got?
Shapovalov.
I was really struggling to find the losers because, I mean, lots of people were losers, but like all of their losers are like not that shocking. So it's like hard to like Zverev is a loser because but like Sinner was in really good form. It's like, well, it kind of is justified. Now that was the case in a lot of them where like probably should have done better, but it's not like embarrassing. I said Djokovic because like I said my main ones are Djokovic and Halep. I mean, when you're number one in the world, you're allowed to lose matches, but you shouldn't be getting absolutely chopped by anyone. So, I mean, Djokovic is a bit unlucky. Obviously, Rafa's like in pretty fucked form, especially at the French Open. And in hindsight, Halep's win isn't that embarrassing because obviously, Swiatek just chopped everyone. But also, you're number one in the world on your favorite surface. You're the favorite to win the tournament. You just won the tournament before. Like, you probably shouldn't be losing 1 and 2 to anyone. So, I feel like that's a bit of a loss for her. And I also had Azarenka. We already covered that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people who are losers, but like not that. There's no one that comes out of this tournament terribly embarrassed. So compared to the US Open, I think there was more embarrassment that came out of that than this tournament. There's just so many upsets that you can't really pick on one person because it was all a bit crazy.
Yeah. Another winner I just thought of, Vondrasova, because she doesn't drop her ranking points. If this was a normal year, she would have plummeted to like 50th. She would have lost all those points. But yeah, I've got 2 more losers.
If the Barty Army was at the French Open, I said if the Barty Army was at the French Open, she'd smash.
Yeah, I've got 2 more losers, both fairly cheap. I don't think, as you guys have mentioned, I don't think there was too many big losers. But Serena Williams, just another Grand Slam goes by without her getting closer to the record. She did pull out in round 2, but her draw really opened up. It was a bit of a death draw when we saw it first. But Azarenka losing early, Batintseva losing early, all of a sudden it really opened up for her. And she would have basically, I think if she was didn't pull out, I think she would have pretty much waltzed through to a quarterfinal against Svitolina. But she pulled out from injury. So, yeah, another one goes begging for her. And then Medvedev.
Yeah.
I know, Brownie, you kind of predicted it, and he sucks on clay. But really, it's just not good enough, is it?
No, you can't be that. Like, obviously, he's terrible on clay. Like, we've established this. But also, you're number 5 in the world. Like, you can't be losing every single match you play on a surface when you're the top 5 players in the world. I feel like that's very embarrassing. But anyway,
you got to be great on all surfaces.
Yeah, exactly. It's just disappointing. And if like Dimonor, he sucks on clay, but it's kind of excusable because he's like not top 20. But someone top 10, top 5, like Medvedev, it's pretty.
Kind of shows he'll probably never be, even though he's still young, up and coming. He'll never be number 1 in the world. If you can't win a match on clay, you can't be world number 1.
No, team will smash him.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to our conversation from our US Open chat about like kind of the dynamics of that next gen, I think Medvedev's almost fallen into last out of that pack now. Because I think Tsitsipas, he kind of made up for his bad US Open with his semi-final here, almost beating Djokovic. Team, obviously, great tournament at US. Zverev did well at the US. Shapovalov did well at the US. He had a bad French Open, but for me, Medvedev's now kind of falling behind those guys.
Yeah.
And he needs
He's
to
lucky.
learn how to hit a ball with spin.
Yeah.
He's getting lucky. He's going to get lucky later on in the year with this whole ranking situation as well, because he won so many tournaments and made so many finals in Masters and stuff from August on, like
They shouldn't count
after
those
Wimbledon
tournaments.
last year. So
Tho-
he's going
those
to get
tournaments
very
suck.
lucky.
Yeah, I hate those tournaments so much. It's like Sabalenka, like she always wins like the Chinese
Yeah.
the Chinese tournaments like Wuhan and stuff. It's like, oh my god,
Everyone's so
even good.
tired by that point. Like no one really cares
Yeah,
anymore.
it's like Jack Sock. But yeah, that's all I've got. I don't know if any of you want to have a final word.
Well,
any-
I was just thinking. I think it'll be very interesting because I think this year it's been very easy for new players or like up and coming players to win and like burst through because obviously everyone's not playing, and like for example the women, Barty's not playing, so Barty May could have retained her championship if she came. So, like we don't know how she would have played against Tech. So I think it would be interesting because I feel for Oz Open, I feel because we are currently, hopefully, we're low in Rona cases, and we are such a compared to America and France, we are such a low COVID case place that I think players will be like, oh, they are so much safer than most of these countries. I'll attend this tournament, and obviously all the high seed players like Barty, because it's Australia, she'll play, and I think mostly everyone will play. So it'll be interesting to see how Tech plays against everyone and everyone being back, and how Sinner plays against everyone. So it'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting as well because these tournaments have been so random and like different to every other year. Even though the Australian Open will be different in some ways, it's the start of the season anyway. So there's probably going to be 2 weeks of pre-tournaments in Australia that people will play, and then there'll be the Australian Open. It'll be a bit weird. It'll seem a bit like the start of the season normally, whereas at the moment this whole situation is so different that people can capitalize on being a bit more adaptable. Whereas next year kind of will go back to normal, at least for the beginning. I'm not sure how they'll do things going on after that, but at least for the start of the year.
And hopefully they release some cheeky ground passes and there's some snaggy matches.
Yeah,
Like it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Like Sinner will be on like court 5, and like Nadia will be like, if she qualifies, she'll be like on the court over there.
Yeah, no, there will be a lot of good players next year, and differing points in their career. But yeah, looking forward to that. As Cam said, hopefully there are grand passes for the Oz Open. There might be some more tennis content. Yeah, exactly. There might be more tennis content coming later in the year. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's not too many big tournaments left, so there potentially may not be. And I don't know if I'll stay a diehard for the rest of the year, but we'll find out, see if I can or not. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, fellas. It's been a late one.
No worries.
But really appreciate it on your Monday night.
Thank you.
If you've gotten this far, well done. Thanks for listening. And yeah, let's keep rolling to that episode 100. See you guys.
Cheers. See ya.